And joining me now is John Brennan, former CIA director during the Obama administration. Thanks so much for being with us, John. I want to talk with Paul Whelan because Vladimir Putin today told the Russian press that other prisoner swaps are possible. But we've been told, by the White House that it was a dead end, that they just wouldn't even deal for Paul Whelan, so that it was Brittany or no one else. Do you think he's opening the door to some more negotiations?
Well, I think, as John Kirby has said publicly, the NSC spokesperson, they have put Paul Whelan in a different category, a separate category from Brittany Griner. And I do believe it's because they take these allegations made against him, and as spurious as they might be, very seriously from the standpoint of intelligence espionage. And so, therefore, I do think that there is the potential for continued discussions and negotiations with the Russians about what might be involved in the release of Paul Whelan. But I do believe the Russians are probably going to try to extract from the United States some concession in terms of releasing somebody that they feel is of a sufficient interest to them, as well as importance to us in exchange for Mr. Whelan.
Let's give our viewers a better sense of Victor Bout's history, his importance. You certainly had experience with him over the years. He was called one of the world's most prolific arms dealers by former Attorney General Eric Holder. He was convicted for selling arms to Colombians who were then expected to use them to kill Americans. Amnesty International claims that Bout sold arms to human rights abusers in Angola and Liberia, Sierra Leone, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. So how would you quantify whether he could still be a threat to the U.S. and an assistance to Putin, who needs weapons for Ukraine, for instance, because of his connections?
Well, certainly Victor Bout for many years was a notorious international arms merchant who was able to move weapons around the globe to a variety of customers and from various weapon suppliers. Now, fortunately, as a result of the good work that was done in Thailand by U.S. Law enforcement entities, he has been off of the playing field, so to speak, for the last 15 years. So I think probably some of his contacts and other things, means of his work and interactions globally have atrophied. That said, I do believe that the Russians and Putin in particular feel particular allegiance to individuals who are working on behalf of the Russian motherland. And despite their denials, Victor Bout did have quite a bit of a relationship with Russian intelligence services during his years of activity. And so therefore, I do believe that Putin and the Russians are hoping that Mr. Bout is going to be able to restart some of these activities. I'm sure some of his contacts are still alive and operational, as well as some of his methods of trying to move these weapons surreptitiously around the globe, that they might be able to tap into that capability in order to support their unfortunate efforts that are still ongoing in Ukraine.
I just want to point out, we were just showing some pictures that were Russian state TV of him reuniting with his mother and his wife back in Moscow when he got home. So this was the homecoming. He's quite the celebrity there. He's very close to Putin. And Putin needs help right now on weapons. So couldn't Victor Bout still be a danger to the United States?
Well, I do think this is something that U.S. intelligence agencies really need to keep a very close watch on. I do believe, again, that the Russians will try to reactivate maybe some of his activities and his contacts. The Russians have faced increasing challenges as far as trying to develop relationships around the globe as a result of sanctions and other actions that have been put in place since its invasion of Ukraine. But we do see that they're able to make some headway. For example, with Iran, there are reports out that the Iranian-Russian military relationship is just continuing to accelerate and expand. And I do believe that Victor Bout's experience, expertise, and knowledge of the international arms market is something that the Russians will try to leverage as they continue to look far and wide for any type of weapon systems, weaponry, and different types of missiles that they need.
And in fact, NBC's Carol Lee and Courtney Kuby are reporting today that U.S. officials are telling them that Russia is providing unprecedented military support to Iran in exchange for drones.
Yes, I think the Russians are going to try to do whatever they can in order to enhance their capabilities and look for different types of niche weapon systems, such as drones, that they need from Iran. And they're going to offer Russian military experience, expertise, and capabilities in exchange. So again, I don't think the Russians are giving up at all on the Ukrainian war that they have launched, and they are going to continue to look for the wherewithal that they need in order to prosecute their war effort, including against, unfortunately, all the civilians who have been targeted by Russian missile systems.